Thank you, Mr. Batu Kutelia, for joining us today for this interview. We really will enjoy your presence in our online platform for our Romanian audience. And we invited you today to explain a little bit the security challenges that Georgia is confronting today during the Russian-Ukrainian war. I will start with the fact that the war has taken many of us by surprise, but I don't think this is the case of Georgia, because you had some experiences in the past. In the last 30 years, you had a few wars with Russian Federation, and the events in August 2008 returned to the present when Russia recognized the independence of these two separatist republics in Eastern Ukraine, and they used your model to say how prepared is Georgia right now to face the challenges of internal and external security issues in the context of the war in Ukraine. What could be the Kremlin scenario following Ukraine's invasion for Georgia right now?
Yes, thank you for asking this question. It's my pleasure to be with you and to have an opportunity to explain things, how we see this war that Russia waged in Ukraine and how it reflects Georgian security and overall the bigger geopolitical context in our region. So as we often say, and the fact now confirms that the Georgia and Ukraine are destined to be together in this position of being in the front line of democracy at the Russian border. And if we see not only geographic, but political front line of the democracy, Georgia and Ukraine are among few countries remaining that have no solid security guarantees. And that's why this war or this fight is a continuation of the process of Putin's aggressive revisionism that he started openly declared in 2007 at the Munich Security Conference. And then we had NATO Bucharest summit when Georgia and Ukraine were refused to get membership action plan. And I think that was a big geopolitical mistake that caused the follow processes that had an avalanche effect. First of all, how Putin interpreted this process. He interpreted that Georgia and Ukraine is no more important for the idea Europe whole and free and at peace. So that process has stopped at the doorsteps of the Georgia and Ukraine, and then Russia started slowly implementing its plan. So we got the war in 2008. It was not easy because we were the first target in that process of Putin's aggressive revisionism. And at that time, the world was different. Perceptions of Russia were different. After 2008, it took 8 years for NATO to shift the perception or shift the paradigm of Russia in all the NATO documents. Until Warsaw NATO summit, Russia was still mentioned as a partner. After 2008 war, Russia still got reset policy from the United States. After 2008, Russia was still getting military equipment from NATO countries like French selling the Mistral ships to Russia. So business as usual remained. So it was a harder fight for us at that time because one thing was the physical war and consequences of the war, but also the informational war or the hybrid war that Georgia was supposed to fight to destroy this narrative that Russia is an aggressor and it should be labeled. So another component is that after the war, well, Georgia got some of the internal problems. So we got huge immediate assistance from the US. That was an economic assistance package, 1 billion from the US, and also additional 3 billion from the European Union. That really helped Georgia to maintain state institutions running, functioning. But also important was that the military hostilities from Russian side was ceased or stopped because of the strong, decisive resolve of, at that time, US President Bush, who sent it military warships and military air planes to deliver humanitarian cargo.
Sorry for interrupting you, but at that time, this financial support helped you to overcome the economic crisis that followed after 2008, I think.
Yes, it helped to maintain, yes, the state economy running with the institution functioning, with the budget deficit cured. So the Georgian economy, notwithstanding it coincided with global economic crisis, Georgian economy continued its path quite well. So the thing is that we got two components, economic assistance and some kind of a security assistance that stopped military operation on early stages. But then the different thing happened. After this maybe not successful war in Georgia, Putin shifted and Russia shifted to the different scenario, to hijacking the state or to capture the state. So Russia started quite a long process of slowly affecting domestic political life, to intervene with hybrid type of warfare, including the information campaign, including the financing some media outlets, pro-Russian political parties. And unfortunately now Georgia is on a different stage when we have Russian oligarchs who captured the state. Ukraine right now, and Ukraine has a different momentum because the world opinion is really very supportive, and plus Ukraine is getting a lot of military support to fight actual war with Russia. So again, that's why I said in the beginning that what has happened in Georgia or is happening till today, because we see now different type of offensive, hybrid type of offensive in Georgia still ongoing. But we are the two most vulnerable frontline democracies who are fighting with Russian hybrid warfare, which has a different phases. But Ukraine in that circumstances has a culminative effect for Russia, because it is a last mile that Putin launched to finally discredit Western liberal democracy. That's why Ukrainian fight is important, and that's why we Georgians feel that this war that Ukraine fights against Russia is our war as well.
No, not many people in Romania know that Georgia was among the states that voted in early February a resolution against war in Ukraine. But it's important to follow this path, because you have changed, or your authorities have changed a little bit the vision regarding how things should happen in Ukraine, and how countries should support Ukraine. How did the Georgian authorities argue their position after the war started, after February 24th?
When we speak about the Georgian government, it's really unfortunate for me to say, but the current Georgian government has a serious crisis of legitimacy, because last three elections that they ran was deeply frauded. And on top of it, we have informal governance of Bidzina Ivanishvili, who successfully captured the state. And this term of state capture has been widely used by the old international non-governmental organizations and experts. And plus this Ivanishvili is an oligarch who has a deep ties, and his money of dubious origin is linked to the Putin's kleptocratic system. Therefore, the Georgian government, which again, as I said, is captured by Ivanishvili, and their statements are not reflecting what is the mood or what is the desire and willing of Georgian public. And unfortunately, we see it because Georgian government decided not to join these sanctions. They publicly said that they will not be joining the sanctions against Ukraine, while, as I said in the previous question, everything that is happening is Ukraine has direct correlation with Georgia, and Georgia is part of this problem, and it is our war as well that has started since and is ongoing since 2008. So this is unfortunate reality now. Of course, there are few international commitments that Georgian, even current Georgian government cannot avoid, but largely their foreign policy has been not to irritate Russia, and on top of it, increase Russian infiltration in Georgia's security services, Russian infiltration in governance and corruption, and economic dependence. Georgia's economic dependence has been significantly increased since Georgian government came to power. That's why we see a lot of protests while Georgian citizens are protesting against the policy of the current Georgian government that they took in terms of war that Russia waged against the Ukraine. Interesting is also to see the public statements of the Georgian government. And also it is important to observe that they never mention Russia or Russian Federation, even when it comes to the atrocities in Bucha, even at the early stage when parliament was adopting the resolution, they sterilized this resolution and did not name the Russia, as if somebody from somewhere intervened in Ukraine. So again, these are the symptoms of the captured state, captured by the oligarch, who has deep ties with the Russian kleptocratic system.
You have a very vivid civil society and a very active society as a whole. Do these internal movements, I mean the protest in the streets, mass protest in the streets, pose a potential risk to Georgian stability, Georgian internal stability? I know from my experience that many of your partners in the region are interested to have stability in Georgia. And I have in mind Azerbaijan, for example, for their energy projects via Georgia and Turkey to the European Union. How these protests can impact the stability in the political system?
Well, I don't think that stability is the most important component that the vibrant democracy needs, because stability is a favorite phrase of the autocrats, and with the stability they justify their tough rule or they're using excessive force against the protests. I think if Georgia current government, and that's also their narrative, that we have their narrative is as if we have a choice of between freedom and between the peace. This is a typical pseudo dilemma that Russian propaganda is using, and all the autocratic propaganda is. Georgia will never be a stable country if it will stay the authoritarianism or Russian type captured state. Right now we have in Georgia some political system that very closely resembles the competitive authoritarianism. There is an image of competitive elections, but the outcome is predetermined, the one who has captured all the institutions, including judiciary. And recently there was an independent report published by the European Union that clearly indicates all these systemic problems that Georgia has and that been talking around. And only argument Georgian current government has that, yes, we are the ones who appease Russia because we do not want war, and the stability is important. This is not a stable, or it is an unstable stability, and Russia always will have tools to manipulate with the domestic problems, especially now when Russia has been sanctioned significantly by the civilized world. Russia has more intentions to destabilize Georgia and Azerbaijan, particularly to deprive the strategic link between Black Sea and Caspian Sea, which is the only way to bypass logistically or through energy routes Russia and deliver energy on the European market or support Central Asian countries with alternative logistical routes. So I think that the government who is clinched to the power, and they have while having a dubious legitimacy, they will be easy target to be manipulated in the name of stability. And I don't think that it would be beneficial overall for our joint fight against Putin's aggressive revisions.
In Moldova, we are talking a lot about the fact that we should change the format of the conflict resolution. What should Tbilisi do to regain its territorial integrity? Do you see this Russian-Ukrainian war as an opportunity for territorial reintegration of Georgia?
I personally think that this war once again proved that the only viable and rapid security solution for European security on the Black Sea is Georgia and Ukraine joining NATO. And that's why I said in 2008 in Bucharest, NATO made a strategic mistake, and we are all paying price for this. First, we saw it in Georgia, now in Ukraine. And this needs to be corrected. And the best and the most rapid, peaceful way for Georgia to restore its territorial integrity is through joining NATO. It is the shortest, peaceful way of Georgia reintegrating its occupied territories. Opportunity is there because all previously existed stereotypes about the conflict resolution has been destroyed. We've seen that there are no institutions that can either prevent this or guarantee if something like this happens in the future to revert it back. UN is incapable, OSCE has no leverages. Therefore, only way how we can, first of all, ensure our own security is getting a collective security umbrella that would allow us then to start new type of peaceful solutions. We've seen how the ceasefire agreements or any agreement with Russia works. Since 2008, it's already 14 years that Georgia has a ceasefire agreement mediated by European Union and President Nicolas Sarkozy, French president at that time. Now again, we have French presidency in European Union, and none of this commitment has been fulfilled by Russia. Particularly, troops has been withdrawn. Even now, Russian foreign minister even says that this agreement has not been signed by them, and they do not recognize it as a kind of a binding agreement for them. Therefore, and plus some previous bad experiences that we Georgians and Ukrainians are very common. The flawed agreements generate more problems. Ukraine had a Bucharest memorandum with no meaningful guarantees, and now they are paying price. While there was a CFE adaptation process, Ukraine again signed a memorandum giving Russian ability to maintain its military base in Crimea, and we've seen how this military base played a key role. Ukraine has a very bad experience of signing Minsk agreement, which again was tailored to the political needs of the bigger players rather than in Ukraine. And Georgia has the same examples, this Sarkozy mediated agreement or some previous UN observation mission in Abkhazia or OSCE peacekeeping mission in South Ossetia. None of them were effective because there were no real guarantees. And in institutions where Russia has a veto power and Russia was granted the role of mediator or exclusive rights to guarantee some security on the ground, like it was in Abkhazia and with the UNOMIC mission. So again, all these are the lessons learned, how not to design conflict resolution mechanism. So this is a new opportunity for us who are interested in more stable Europe to design proper security guarantees, first of all, to the sovereign nations like Georgia and Ukraine, and then build up on this with a proper conflict resolution, which would include economic as well as political and security dimensions.
You have mentioned NATO umbrella, and I know that Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine made some steps by sending letters to EU asking for the EU membership. How are Georgia's chances to achieving EU candidate status evolving? As you know, Moldova has Romania. Among supporters, Ukraine has Poland. Who advocates for Georgian European integration?
For Georgian European integration, educate Georgian people, 80% of which with all the polls consistently support Georgia's NATO and EU integration. Unfortunately, Georgian government recent activities that has resulted in significant backsliding in democracy is not a strong argument to support the case. But I think that Eastern European Partnership Initiative was a brilliant, strategically thought idea. And I hope that this political idea will not become a hostage of bureaucracy, because all the enlargements has been a part of the political decision-making and not a bureaucratic process. Therefore, I hope that the approach will be shifted in a different dimension. It's not accepting Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova in European Union when they will become a perfect democracies, but just the opposite, accelerating their membership process and use this process as a tool to reinforce and accelerate democratic transformation process, because this would be a strong anchor and with the clear path shown that would obstruct Russian attempt to seed some kind of apathy in Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldova, that it is mission impossible. I believe that it is mission possible, but only if it's a political process, not vice versa, that bureaucracy leads the political process. And then, of course, chances are high.
At the beginning of our discussion, you have mentioned some hybrid threats. But I would like to ask you, what are the main types of hybrid threats facing Georgia today, and what role for the ethnic minorities, and how Russia is using ethnic minorities in Georgia to influence the decision-making process, or to influence your path to the Euro-Atlantic integration, and maybe to sabotage a few of your political reforms?
Hybrid warfare includes several dimensions, which consists of hard measures like occupation of parts of to 20% of Georgian territory, using this as a platform for fear-mongering of and some military provocations like creeping annexation, kidnapping people, so seeding the fear. Plus, this includes using corruption and corruption as a lubricant to use the leverages on the government to have influence on political or economic decision making. On top of it, we see the information domain and infiltration of these funds in the Georgian information and political space. We see Russia-connected money laundering schemes, and unfortunately, but again, that has been increased significantly with the Georgian Dream in power. Also financing pro-Russian radical nationalistic political parties with their own media platforms, etc. And plus also significant infiltration, again, because of the corruption and the kleptocratic money being laundered in Georgia in security services. So this all together creates a very fertile ground for Russia to manipulate domestic political processes, to use an information domain for achieving different type of outcomes, starting with the fear-mongering and seeding the apathy and everything in between. Also cultivating some pro-Russian statements. Fortunately, they were not that successful to shift Georgian public opinion as a pro-Russian, but some other components, unfortunately, but with the captured state by the Russian oligarch, has given them results. And one of the results we've seen with the Georgia taking Russian side in this war against Ukraine, rather than strongly supported its strategic ally and partner, in opposition of this strong public will to support Ukraine.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you.
Yes, and you mentioned ethnic minorities. So,
yes,
yeah,
I mentioned ethnic minorities.
Ethnic minorities,
You have Armenians, you have Russians, and you have also Azeri people in Georgia, who usually are used by pro-Russian forces or by pro-Russian opinions to impose some decision-making processes in your government.
Yes, unfortunately, we've seen it, and we've seen how Russia conducted several successful operations to create problems between Georgia and Azerbaijan, for example, or Georgian and Armenia. This recent case with David Garegi, which is a holy place that has located, monastery complex that located both on Georgian territory and Azerbaijan territory with borders not delineated, while Georgian government was greedy enough to use this for their own domestic pre-election campaign. But in contrast, they created a lot of problems with Azerbaijan. So problems between Azerbaijan and Georgia is in Russian interest, definitely. Again, as I said in my previous comment, that that would prevent successful launching the alternative energy or logistic routes from Caspian to Black Sea and vice versa. So strategically, Russia would, the only country who will benefit a lot is Russia. So we see that type of operations on the ground. Fortunately, the Georgian public is in its majority is not xenophobic. The same we can say that Azerbaijan behaves very strategically, and also the recent changes because of the Nagorno-Karabakh that adds totally new dimension to the regional dynamics, so far is not allowing Russia to manipulate. But now when the stakes are high, again, because of the sanctions that Russia has been imposed on, risks might increase, again, because of the high degree of infiltration. On parallel, of course, there needs to be some strategic decisions made. That's why I think Georgia's NATO membership would be a big step forward that would eliminate any fertile ground for Russia to manipulate with the processes, and just the opposite will bring or divert political or regional cooperation in a proper normal direction. We see now that Armenia and Turkey is normalizing their relations. So all this domestic turmoil might lead to the new security arrangements. But what would be the processes largely will depend on how new security architecture on the Black Sea will look like, how situation will evolve in Russia, and I hope that Russia will lose totally this war. They already lost morally, politically, partly militarily as well, but also this will be a determining factor how the space for manipulation will see. Before the war, we've seen Russia pushing for some kind of regional platform, 3+3, with 3 South Caucasus countries and 3 bigger players, Iran, Turkey, and Russia. I don't think this idea would fly, but Georgian government, again, was weak enough to respond in tough terms to this Russian initiative. So again, it's all are part of the moving parts of the new security architecture in the region, and largely I look optimistically because free world is winning. We need now new political agenda on finalizing the process of Euro-Poland free and peace, and that would be the most significant blow to the Russian strategy of establishing some spheres of influence in its neighborhood.
On this optimistic view, I would like to thank you once again for joining us and for be part of our debates, online debates on our platform. And hopefully, as I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, we will see each other in Bucharest or Tbilisi or maybe in peaceful Ukraine soon enough to support Ukraine after the war. Thank you so much, and please stay safe.
Thank you very much for